My girlfriend's family shut her out for one missed holiday. We thought spending Easter with my parents would be no big deal, but when my girlfriend's family found out, they hit back hard, leaving her out of her cousin's wedding while inviting everyone else. I'd been with my girlfriend, Sarah, for about 3 years. We lived together in a small apartment, both working full-time jobs, trying to balance our lives while keeping things steady. Her family was a big part of her world. Tight-knit, always in each other's business, the kind of family that had group chats buzzing 24/7 and expected everyone to show up for every single event, no exceptions. They were nice enough to me at first, welcoming even, but their pillar of the community they were, there was this unspoken rule. Holidays were spent with them, always, no discussion. My family lived a few hours away, and I hadn't pushed back on it much because EAD Sarah's family meant a lot to her, and I figured it was just how things were. It wasn't a huge deal at first. I liked her family, and their gatherings were fun. Big meals, loud conversations, everyone packed into their suburban house. But after a couple of years, it started to wear on me. Every Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, even random long weekends, we were expected to be there. My family's holidays were smaller, quieter, and I hadn't seen them much since moving closer to Sarah's hometown. I brought it up a few times, suggesting we could split things, maybe spend a holiday with my folks for a change. Sarah would nod, say it sounded fair, but when the time came, her family would assume we'd be there, and she'd act like it was no big deal to just go along with it. I didn't push too hard. I didn't want to rock the boat. Things started to shift around the third year. I was getting tired of always being the one to give in. My parents never complained, but I could tell they were disappointed when I'd call to say we weren't coming for another holiday. I started feeling like I was letting them down, and it was building resentment. Sarah's family wasn't mean about it. They'd just act like it was a given we'd be at their place, and Sarah would go along with it without question. It was like her family had this gravitational pull, and I was stuck in its orbit. The breaking point came when we started planning for Easter. I told Sarah I wanted to spend it with my family this time. My parents had been asking for months, and I hadn't seen them since last summer. Sarah hesitated, said her family always did a big Easter thing. Egg hunts, a huge dinner, the works. I pointed out we'd spent the last 3 Easters with her family, and I wasn't asking for much, just one holiday. She got quiet, then said she'd think about it. A few days later, she agreed, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled. I figured she'd get over it once we were there. My family was laid back, and I thought it'd be a nice change of pace. We drove to my parents' place the day before Easter. It was a different vibe. Smaller, calmer, just my parents, my sister, and a couple of cousins. We cooked together, watched old movies, and caught up. Sarah seemed a little off, checking her phone constantly, but I didn't think much of it. I figured she was just adjusting to being away from her family's chaos. The weekend went fine, nothing dramatic, but when we got back to our apartment, Sarah was distant. I asked her what was wrong, and she said it was nothing, just work stress. I didn't buy it, but I let it go. A couple of weeks later, I found out what was really going on. Sarah's cousin, Emily, was getting married in June. We'd both been invited, or so I thought. Sarah got a call from her mom, and I overheard her sounding upset. When she hung up, I asked what was up. She told me Emily had forgotten to send her an invite to the wedding. I was confused. Sarah and Emily were close, always texting, always hanging out at family events. It didn't make sense. I pressed her, and she finally admitted her family was upset we didn't come for Easter. They thought I was pulling her away, and this was their way of making a point. I was stunned. Her whole family got invites, even distant cousins, but Sarah was left out. It wasn't a mistake, it was deliberate. I couldn't believe it. Her family was punishing her, us, for spending one holiday with my parents. I felt this mix of anger and guilt. Maybe I'd pushed too hard for Easter, and now Sarah was paying for it. But the more I thought about it, the more unfair it seemed. We weren't kids. We had our own lives, our own place, and I had every right to see my family. The fact that they'd go this far, cutting her out of a wedding, was unreal. Sarah was hurt, trying to act like it wasn't a big deal, but I could see it was. She kept saying she'd fix it, talk to her family, make it right. But I wasn't so sure. Her family had a way of making their expectations clear, and this felt like a power move. The next few weeks were tense. Sarah spent a lot of time on the phone with her mom and sisters, trying to smooth things over. I stayed out of it, not wanting to make things worse, but I was pissed. I'd always been respectful, showed up to every event they invited me to, and now they were treating Sarah like she'd betrayed them. I started wondering if this was how it'd always be. Her family calling the shots, expecting us to fall in line. I didn't say much to Sarah about it, but I was starting to question how much I could take. Things got worse before they got better, or at least before we thought they might get better. Sarah was still reeling from being left out of her cousin Emily's wedding. She spent weeks trying to fix it, calling her mom, her sisters, even Emily herself. From what I could piece together, her family was sticking to their story that it was an oversight, but nobody was buying it. Sarah was too loyal to call it what it was. Punishment? But I could see the hurt in her eyes every time she hung up the phone. She'd go quiet, scroll through her family's group chat, and try to act like everything was fine. I didn't push her to talk about it too much, but it was eating at me. Her family's move felt so calculated, like they were sending a message. Choose us, or you're out. I tried to stay supportive, but I was struggling with my own feelings. Part of me felt guilty, like I'd caused this by insisting we go to my parents for Easter. Maybe if I hadn't pushed, Sarah wouldn't be dealing with this. But another part of me was furious. Her family wasn't just mad at her, they were mad at me too for daring to have my own plans. It wasn't like I dragged Sarah away, we'd agreed on it together. Yet here we were, dealing with this silent treatment from her entire family. It wasn't just the wedding. Invites to smaller things, family dinners, game nights, stopped coming. Sarah would find out after the fact, seeing pictures posted online, everyone smiling without her. I suggested we talk to her parents directly, together. Sarah wasn't keen on it. She said it'd make things worse that her family didn't like confrontation. I didn't get it. How was excluding her from a wedding not confrontational? But I respected her wishes and backed off. Instead, I tried to keep things normal at home, planning date nights, cooking together, anything to keep her mind off it. It worked sometimes, but I could tell she was carrying the weight of it. She'd get texts from her family, little passive-aggressive jabs about how busy we must be, and she'd just sigh and put her phone down. About a month before the wedding drama, Sarah got a call from her mom. I was in the other room, but I could hear her tone shift, hopeful at first, then deflated. When she got off the phone, she told me her mom had invited us to a family barbecue the next weekend. It was the first invite in weeks, and Sarah was clearly relieved, thinking it was a sign things were turning around. I wasn't so sure. It felt like a test, like her family was seeing if we'd jump back in line. I didn't say that to Sarah, though. She was so happy to be included again, and I didn't want to ruin it. We agreed to go. The barbecue was at her parents' house, same as always. When we pulled up, the backyard was already full. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the whole crew. Everyone was polite enough, saying hi, asking how work was, but something felt off. Nobody mentioned the wedding or Sarah being left out. It was like it never happened. Emily was there, laughing with her fiancé, showing off her ring to everyone. Sarah tried to join in, asking about the wedding plans, but Emily kept it vague, changing the subject. I noticed Sarah's mom watching us closely, like she was waiting for something. It made my skin crawl. Halfway through the night, Sarah's dad pulled me aside to help with the grill. I knew it wasn't about the burgers. He started talking about how important family was, how Sarah's always been so close to everyone, and how they'd all been disappointed when we didn't show for Easter. He didn't raise his voice or anything, but the message was clear. I was the problem. I kept my cool, said I understood family was important, but that I had a family too. He just nodded like he wasn't really listening and went back to flipping burgers. I felt like I'd been put on notice. Sarah didn't see it that way. On the drive home, she said she thought the barbecue went well, that her family was warming up again. I didn't want to argue, but I couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing some kind of game. A few days later, Sarah got a text from Emily. It wasn't an invite to the wedding, it was a request for Sarah to help with some last-minute wedding decorations. No apology, no explanation, just an ask for her time. Sarah was thrilled, thinking it meant she was back in. I wasn't so sure. It felt like they were dangling inclusion in front of her, but only if she proved herself. I kept my mouth shut, but I was starting to wonder how long this could go on before something broke. The weeks leading up to Emily's wedding were a blur of tension and mixed signals. Sarah threw herself into helping with the decorations, spending hours cutting out table centerpieces and stringing fairy lights for the reception. She'd come home exhausted but hopeful, convinced her family was finally letting her back in. I wasn't so optimistic. The fact that they still hadn't invited her to the wedding itself gnawed at me. It felt like they were using her, getting her to do the work without giving her a seat at the table. I tried to bring it up once, gently, but Sarah brushed it off, saying she was just happy to be involved. I didn't push, but it was hard to watch her bend over backwards for people who'd deliberately hurt her. The barbecue had set the tone for how her family was going to play this. They'd act like everything was normal, but there was this undercurrent of control. Sarah's mom would call her with little tasks, pick up this, drop off that, help Emily with something else. Sarah did it all without complaint, thinking it was her way back into their good graces. I started noticing how much it was wearing her down. She'd stay up late finishing work for the wedding, then get up early for her actual job. She wasn't sleeping well, and I could tell the stress was piling up. I tried to take on more around the apartment, cooking, cleaning, anything to give her a break, but it didn't feel like enough. A week before the wedding, Sarah got a call from her sister, Claire. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard her voice crack. She hung up and sat on the couch, staring at her phone. I asked what happened, and she said Claire had casually mentioned that the whole family was going to the wedding rehearsal dinner. Everyone except Sarah. It wasn't even a formal invite list, just a family gathering, and they'd left her out again. I could see her trying to hold it together, saying it was probably a misunderstanding. but I was done with their excuses. It was clear they were still punishing her, and now they were dragging it out, letting her hope just to pull the rug out again. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I told Sarah I thought her family was being manipulative, that they were using these little inclusions, like letting her help with decorations, to keep her on a leash without actually forgiving her for Easter. She got defensive, saying I didn't understand how her family worked, that they'd come around eventually. I pointed out that they'd had months to come around, and instead were making her jump through hoops. She didn't want to hear it. We didn't argue, but the conversation left things tense between us. I hated seeing her like this, caught between her family's expectations and the reality of how they were treating her. The wedding day came, and Sarah wasn't invited. She dropped off the last of the decorations at the venue the day before, and Emily thanked her, all smiles like nothing was wrong. Sarah came home and cried for the first time since this whole mess started. I held her, not saying much, just letting her get it out. She kept saying she didn't understand why they were doing this, that she'd done everything they asked. I didn't have an answer, but I was starting to see her family for what they were, people who'd rather control her than let her live her own life. After the wedding, things shifted. Sarah stopped answering her family's calls as much. She'd see their texts, sigh, and put her phone down. One night, we were watching TV, and she turned to me and said she was tired of feeling like she had to earn their love. It was the first time she'd admitted it out loud. I told her she didn't have to keep proving herself, that she deserved better. She nodded, and for a moment, I thought we were on the same page. But the next day, her mom called, and Sarah picked up like nothing had changed. It was like she couldn't break free, no matter how much it hurt. That's when I realized this wasn't just about her family, it was about us too. I started wondering if I could keep doing this, watching her get pulled back into their drama over and over. I loved her, but I didn't know if I could spend my life navigating her family's rules. We hadn't talked about marriage or anything long-term yet, but this whole situation made me question what that future would look like. Would every holiday, every big decision be a battle with them? I didn't say any of this to Sarah, she was already dealing with enough. But it was there, in the back of my mind, growing louder every day.